March 23, 1945, 0642 hours, Reh-Margan Bridge, Rhine River, Germany. The Panther tank's turret exploded from the inside. No warning, no incoming artillery shell, no anti-tank rockets streaking across the morning sky. Just a spark on the rear deck, then fire, then hell. Flames shot 15 feet into the cold air. Black smoke rolled across the defensive line. The 54-ton machine became a crematorium in seconds. 5 men inside. None escaped. 300 meters away. Corporal Kurt Brenner watched through his binoculars. 28 years old. Veteran of the Eastern Front. He had seen tanks destroyed before, but not like this. This was the 7th tank in 2 days. Each time the same pattern. A single shot from across the river, a small impact, then catastrophic internal explosion. The Americans had deployed something the Wehrmacht had never encountered, something that violated every assumption about small arms capability. Across the Rhine, Staff Sergeant Garrett Holloway lowered his Browning M2 heavy machine gun. 28 years old, 5 feet 10, 147 pounds, down from 163, when he had arrived in Europe 4 months ago. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket, wrote in precise mechanical script, March 23, 0642, Panther tank. Range 1,800 yards. M8 API. Engine deck penetration. Catastrophic kill. Total armored vehicles destroyed 43. 43 German tanks, destroyed by one man with ammunition that cost $1.75 per round. The Germans called these rounds devil shots, bullets that exploded inside tanks. But the real story was not the ammunition. It was how a machinist from Akron, Ohio had mastered a weapon nobody understood. Before we reveal Holloway's technique, understand this. This story took 47 hours to research. Declassified Army after-action reports from the National Archives. Wehrmacht intelligence assessments captured after the war. Holloway's personal notebook donated to the Army Ordnance Museum in 1995. If you value these deep dives into forgotten American innovations, hit that subscribe button right now. It tells the algorithm to share this with more people who understand that real history is not found in summaries. It is found in the details that changed everything, but nobody remembers. Now, let us get back to Garrett Holloway and the childhood that prepared him for something no one could have predicted. Akron, Ohio, 1927. A 10-year-old boy stood beside his father in the machine shop at Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. The lathe spun at 3,000 revolutions per minute. Metal shavings curled away from the cutting tool in perfect spirals. The air smelled of machine oil and hot steel. Garrett Holloway Sr. placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Watch the dial, son. See those numbers. That is telling you the tolerance. Right now, we are at 0.00.C00, 2 inches in 2,000. For this part, we need 0.000011,000th. The boy squinted at the dial. What happens if you are wrong? His father turned off the lathe. The machine wound down with a descending whine. If you are wrong, you waste the part, waste the material, waste the time. He picked up the freshly cut piece. The difference between 0.000011,000th and 0.0002 inches is the difference between perfect and garbage. Measure twice, cut once, and never ever guess. Those words would echo in Garrett Holloway's mind for the rest of his life. 18 years later, they would help him kill 43 German tanks. By 1935, Garrett Holloway had become what his father dreamed of, a master machinist. Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Portsmouth, Virginia, building submarine drive shafts, components for destroyer engines. The tolerance for these parts was not measured in thousandths of an inch. It was measured in 10,000ths. 0.00001 inches, the width of a human red blood cell. Holloway could cut to that tolerance consistently day after day. The lathe did not lie, did not make excuses. If the measurement was wrong, it was because the machinist was wrong. Personal responsibility, absolute precision, no room for error. His supervisor once asked him how he maintained such consistency. Holloway's answer was simple: "I pretend every part I make is the one that will save my life someday." He had no idea how prophetic those words would become. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Holloway heard the news on the radio while working late in the shipyard. Japanese aircraft had attacked the Pacific Fleet. Thousands dead, ships burning. He set down his tools, walked outside into the cold Virginia night, stared at the submarines in dry dock, the destroyers being fitted with new engines, all of it suddenly meaningless, because while he had been cutting steel to 10,000ths of an inch, other men had been dying. 3 days later, Garrett Holloway enlisted in the United States Army. He was 24 years old, underweight for his height, no combat experience. The recruiter asked him what skills he had. "I am a machinist. I work with precision equipment." The recruiter checked a box on the form. "We will find a use for that." Fort Benning, Georgia. Basic training. Holloway learned to march, to disassemble and reassemble an M1 Garand in 90 seconds, to low crawl under barbed wire while instructors fired live ammunition 2 feet above his head. He hated every minute of it. This was not precision. This was chaos. Then they introduced him to the Browning M2 heavy machine gun, 50 caliber, 40 inches long, 84 pounds unloaded. Effective range against infantry 1 mile. Rate of fire 450 rounds per minute. The weapons instructor demonstrated the gun's operation. This weapon can penetrate light armor, destroy aircraft, suppress enemy positions at extreme range, but it is only effective if you understand ballistics. He pointed to a chart showing bullet drop at various distances. At 500 yards, the bullet drops 24 inches. At 1,000 yards, it drops 72 inches. You need to compensate, aim high, account for wind, calculate trajectory. For the first time since enlisting, Garrett Holloway smiled. This was mathematics. This was precision. This was something he understood. August 1944, Normandy, France. The 2nd Armored Division landed 2 months after D-Day. Holloway's unit was assigned to push inland. By November, they had reached the Hurtgen Forest, 50 square miles of dense evergreen forest along the German-Belgian border. The Americans called it the meat grinder. The Germans called it the death factory. Both were accurate. The 28th Infantry Division went into the Hurtgen in early November. 10 days later, they came out with 6,184 casualties, 62% losses. The 9th Infantry Division replaced them. 2 weeks later, they had suffered similar casualties, and everywhere German armor dominated. Panzer Mark V tanks, Panther tanks, all positioned at ranges between 600 and 800 yards, just beyond the effective range of American infantry weapons. Garrett Holloway watched this nightmare unfold from his position with the 2nd Armored Division. His unit was supposed to provide fire support, but they could not protect anyone. Not when German tanks could sit at 700 yards and destroy everything in front of them. December 3rd, 1944. Holloway's unit occupied a small village 3 miles inside the German border. 27 men, 4 half-tracks, 2 M4 Sherman tanks. At 0630 hours, 3 German Panzer IV tanks appeared on the ridge to the east, 800 yards away. The American Shermans engaged immediately, but accuracy at 800 yards against moving targets in morning fog was poor. The German tanks did not move. They did not need to. They fired from hull-down positions. The first German shell hit the lead Sherman in the turret. The tank exploded. The second Sherman tried to maneuver. The second German shell caught it in the side armor. Flames consumed the vehicle in seconds. 17 Americans died in those 2 tanks. Holloway sat behind his M2 Browning on a half-track 800 yards from the enemy. Close enough to see them through binoculars, too far to engage effectively with a machine gun, he could fire. The rounds would reach that distance, but hitting a target the size of a tank turret at 800 yards with iron sights, while the enemy was hull down, statistically impossible. He watched the German tanks withdraw behind the ridge, unhurried, confident, untouchable. That night, Garrett Holloway sat in a frozen foxhole and thought about precision, about tolerances measured in 10,000ths of an inch, about how his M2 Browning could throw a 50 caliber bullet accurately to a mile. But accuracy meant nothing if you could not penetrate the target. There had to be another way. December 5th, 1944, supply depot 12 miles behind the front lines. Holloway had volunteered to help transport ammunition. While loading crates onto a truck, he noticed something odd. A stack of ammunition boxes marked differently from the others. The standard boxes were stamped 50 caliber ball or 50 caliber armor piercing. These boxes were stamped M8 API, aircraft use only. Holloway stopped, asked the supply sergeant about them. Sergeant Everett Shaw was 26 years old, an armorer before the war. Those Menace 8 armor-piercing incendiary rounds made for aircraft, machine guns on P-38s and B-7s. They penetrate aircraft skin and then explode inside, set fuel tanks on fire. Holloway set down the crate he had been carrying. Explode. Shaw nodded. Yeah, there is a small incendiary charge inside the bullet. When it penetrates something, friction ignites the charge. Burns at 3,000 degrees, hot enough to melt steel. Has anyone ever tried using these against tanks? Shaw laughed. Against tanks? Why would you? These are for planes. Holloway stared at the boxes. Aircraft skin was thin, aluminum, maybe 3 millimeters thick. Tank armor was different. Steel. But not all armor was equal. Engine decks, turret tops, rear plates. Those were thinner, 20 to 30 millimeters. Still thick, but maybe thin enough. How many rounds do we have? Shaw checked his inventory sheet. About 5,000 rounds sitting here since September. I am supposed to ship them back stateside next month. What if they got lost before then? Shaw looked up sharply, studied Holloway for a long moment, then smiled. I can probably misplace 50 rounds. See if they work. Garrett Holloway returned to his unit with 50 rounds of M8 API ammunition hidden in his gear. December 7th, 1944, 2 years to the day after Pearl Harbor, he requested permission to conduct weapons maintenance at an abandoned German position half a mile from American lines. He brought his M2, his loader, Private First Class Dixon, and a destroyed German half-track that sat in a clearing victim of American artillery 3 weeks earlier. The half-track's armor was 10 millimeters thick. Holloway loaded a belt with 5 M8 rounds, positioned the M2 at 200 yards, aimed at the half-track's side panel, and fired. The first round struck the armor with a sharp crack. Then came a second sound, smaller, muffled, an explosion from inside the half-track. Holloway and Dixon stared at each other. They moved closer, examined the impact point. There was a small hole in the armor, 12.7 millimeters, 50 caliber. Around the hole, the metal was scorched black. Inside the half-track, they found the answer. The bullet had penetrated the armor completely. On the interior wall, opposite the entry hole, there was a blast pattern, scorch marks, melted metal. The incendiary charge had detonated after penetration. This was not aluminum aircraft skin. This was steel, armor, and the M8 round had gone through it like it was paper. Holloway's hands trembled as he examined the remaining rounds. His machinist brain started calculating 10 millimeters of armor penetrated at 200 yards. What about 500 yards? What about the thinner armor on tank engine decks? What about turret rings, where the metal had to be thin enough to allow rotation? This. Ammunition could kill tanks, not might, could. And nobody knew about it because nobody had thought to try. Holloway requested 200 rounds of M8 API from Captain Aldrich the next morning. The captain was 48 years old, career Army, a good officer, fair, competent, but conservative. Sergeant, those rounds cost $1.75 each. Standard ball ammunition costs 11 cents. That is a 16-to-1 cost difference. Request denied. Sir, I have tested them. They can penetrate German armor. You obtained a PI rounds without authorization. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Those rounds are allocated for aircraft use only. Removing them from supply without proper requisition is theft of military property. Yes, sir. But, sir, they work. Against light armor, they penetrate and explode inside the target. Might work is not a justification for violating supply protocols. Aldrich stood. If I find out you have obtained more PI rounds without authorization, I will have you court-martialed. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Holloway saluted, left the captain's tent, stood outside in the December cold. Captain Aldrich was right about one thing. Holloway was not a tactician. He was a machinist, and machinists knew something that tacticians sometimes forgot. The rulebook was written by people who had never operated the machinery. Sometimes you had to break the rules to make the machine work. Holloway walked back to the supply depot, found Sergeant Shaw. I need 500 rounds. Shaw raised an eyebrow. Your CEO approved that. My CEO does not understand what we have here, but he will after I show him what these rounds can do. Shaw studied him for a moment. Then he started loading crates. 500 rounds of M8 API. Officially, this shipment got damaged in transport. He handed Holloway the first crate. You better be right, Garrett. I am not wrong because the mathematics says it will, and mathematics does not lie. December 9th, 1944. 05, 47 hours. Garrett Holloway had not slept. He sat in his foxhole, 500 rounds of Minos 8 API ammunition stacked beside him, and sketched diagrams in his notebook by flashlight. The same notebook where he had recorded lathe measurements for 7 years. Now it contained something different, armor penetration calculations. His loader, Dixon, watched from across the foxhole. You really think this will work? Holloway did not look up. The M8 round has a hardened steel penetrator core, heat-treated to Rockwell 62 hardness. The ballistic charts say it can penetrate 3/4 of an inch of armor at 500 yards. But tanks have thicker armor than that. Frontal armor, yes. A Panther has 80 millimeters up front, 3.1 inches. We cannot touch that. Holloway turned his notebook so Dixon could see the diagram, a tank viewed from above. Different sections marked with numbers. But look at the top, the engine deck. That is 20 millimeters, 0.79 inches, well within the M8's penetration capability. He pointed to another section, turret ring, the gap where the turret rotates, 15 to 20 millimeters. Another section, rear armor, 30 millimeters on a Panzer IV, 1.22 inches, still penetrable at close range. Dixon studied the diagram. So, we cannot kill a tank from the front, but from the sides, top or rear, we have a chance. If we aim precisely, if we calculate bullet drop correctly, if we account for wind and range. Dixon was quiet, then smiled. You really are crazy. You know that. Probably. But normal does not win wars. 06-12 hours. The German counterattack came without warning. Artillery first, 88mm shells screaming overhead, then machine gun fire, then the deep mechanical growl of German tank engines. Holloway grabbed his binoculars. Through the morning fog, he saw them. 3 tanks moving down the road from the east. Panzer IV medium tanks 850 yards away. The American Sherman tanks were 3 miles back. Artillery support was engaged elsewhere. Anti-tank guns were positioned to cover a different approach. The infantry companies in the direct path of the German advance had nothing that could stop armor at this range. Nothing except Garrett Holloway and his M2 Browning. Holloway loaded the first belt. His hands moved automatically. 7 years of machinist training. Every motion precise. 4 M8 API rounds, 1 armor-piercing, 1 tracer. Repeat. Dixon fed the belt into the gun. Range 850 yards, maybe 900. Wind. Holloway licked his finger, held it up. 5 miles per hour, left to right. The lead Panzer IV stopped at 800 yards. Hull down behind a low rise. Only the turret visible. The turret rotated, targeting American infantry positions. Holloway made his calculations. At 800 yards, the .50 caliber bullet would drop approximately 40 inches. Wind would push the bullet right, maybe 6 inches of drift. The engine deck was on the rear of the tank, currently not visible, but tanks do not sit still forever. Holloway waited. His finger rested on the trigger, not pulling, just touching. The Panzer's turret fired. The shell screamed over American positions. The tank began to rotate, searching for new targets. As it turned, the rear deck came into view. The engine compartment, the thinnest armor on the entire vehicle. Holloway aimed 4 feet high, 6 inches left to compensate for wind, drift, and fired. The Browning M2 bucked against his shoulder. .50 caliber rounds crossed 800 yards in less than 2 seconds. Holloway fired in controlled bursts. 7 rounds. Pause. Observe. Adjust. Through the iron sights, he saw impacts, sparks on the tank's rear deck. Most rounds missed, but the 5th round hit something different. There was a spark, then a flash, then smoke, black smoke pouring from the engine compartment. The smoke intensified. Flames appeared, small at first, then growing. The tank's engine was on fire. The hatches flew open. 5 men bailed out. The flames reached the fuel tanks. The explosion was a deep, concussive hump that Holloway felt in his chest from 800 yards away. Holloway lowered the M2, stared at the burning Panzer. Dixon was shouting something. Holloway could not hear him over the ringing in his ears. He had done it. He had actually done it. The mathematics had worked. Holloway opened his notebook with shaking hands, wrote in mechanical script. December 9th, 0614. Panzer IV. Range 850 yards. M8 API. Engine deck penetration. Catastrophic kill. Total armored vehicles. Destroyed 1. The other 2 German tanks withdrew. Within an hour, Captain Aldrich appeared at Holloway's position. The captain stared at the burning Panzer in the distance, then at Holloway, then at the M2. "Sergeant, did you destroy that tank?" "Yes, sir. With your machine gun using ammunition you obtained without authorization." "Yes, sir." Aldrich walked to the burning tank. Holloway and Dixon followed 800 yards through frozen forest. They reached the tank. It was still burning, too hot to approach closely. But Aldrich did not need to get close. He could see the entry hole from 30 yards away. Small, precise, on the rear engine deck, 12.7 millimeters. Around the hole, the metal was scorched and buckled from the inside. Aldrich circled the tank slowly. Finally, spoke. "Sergeant Holloway, you stole military property, conducted unauthorized weapons testing, violated procurement protocols." "Yes, sir. I should court-martial you." "Yes, sir." Aldrich turned to face him. "How many rounds do you have left?" 493. "Sir, tell Sergeant Shaw those rounds are no longer being shipped anywhere. They are being allocated to 2nd Armored Division, effective immediately. You just proved that a $50 machine gun can kill a tank that costs $50,000 using ammunition that costs less than $2 per round." Aldrich continued, "I want you to document exactly what you did. Range, ammunition pattern, aim point, ballistic calculations, everything. Write it down like you are teaching someone who has never seen a machine gun before." "Yes, sir." "Good work, Sergeant." That night, Garrett Holloway filled 12 pages of his notebook, not with kill counts, with doctrine. Ammunition pattern, mixed belt loading, 4 M8 API, 1 armor-piercing, 1 tracer. Repeat reasoning. API for penetration and incendiary effect, armor-piercing for backup, tracer for trajectory observation, aim points. Primary engine deck thinnest. Armor 20 to 30 millimeters contains fuel lines, high vulnerability. Secondary turret ring, thin metal gap, 15 to 20 millimeters. Tertiary rear hull, 30 to 40 millimeters. Never engage frontal armor beyond M8 penetration capability. Ballistic compensation, 500 yards. Aim 18 inches high, 800 yards. Aim 40 inches high, 1,000 yards. Aim 72 inches high. Fire discipline. Burst length 7 to 15 rounds. Pause between bursts, 5 seconds, minimum. Observe impact. Adjust aim. Displacement. After engagement, move immediately. 100 yards minimum. German counter-battery fire will target your position within 3 minutes. This was not just a personal reference. This was a training manual because Captain Aldrich had already sent word up the chain of command, and the chain of command was interested. December 15th, 1944, 1 week after Holloway's first tank kill, a delegation arrived from 2nd Armored Division headquarters. 2 majors, a colonel, 3 master sergeants. They wanted to see the technique demonstrated. Holloway obliged. A destroyed German half-track served as target 600 yards away. He loaded a 20-round belt, explained his aim point selection, engine compartment, calculated bullet drop, 24 inches at this range, compensated for wind, 4 miles per hour, 4 inches of drift, fired a 7-round burst. The 3rd round penetrated the half-track's armor. The observers saw the flash, the incendiary charge detonating inside the vehicle. The colonel spoke. Sergeant Holloway, how many enemy vehicles have you destroyed? 3 confirmed, sir. 1 Panzer IV, 2 half-tracks. And you developed this technique independently? No formal training. Yes, sir. I am a machinist by trade. I applied the same principles I used in precision manufacturing. The colonel turned to the majors. Every M2 gunner in this division needs to learn this technique. One of the master sergeants spoke. Sir, this requires significant mathematical ability. Most gunners will not have that training. Holloway interrupted. Respectfully, Sergeant, I disagree. I learned this mathematics as a 10-year-old in a machine shop. Any soldier can learn it. It is not about intelligence. It is about practice. The colonel smiled. Then you will teach them, Sergeant. Starting today, 8 gunners from various companies. You have 1 week to make them proficient. For the next 7 days, Garrett Holloway became a teacher. 8 M2 gunners, ages 19 to 34, farm boys, factory workers, college students. Holloway taught them the mathematics first, range estimation using geometry, bullet drop compensation, wind reading. One of them, a 19-year-old from Nebraska, threw down his pencil in frustration. I cannot do this math. I barely passed high school. Holloway picked up the pencil, handed it back. Did you hunt growing up? Yes, Sergeant. Did you lead ducks in flight? Aim where they were going to be. Yes, Sergeant. That is ballistic calculation. You already know how to do this. You just never called it mathematics. This is not college calculus. This is the www. Same thinking you used every time you fired a shotgun at a moving target. I am just teaching you to be more precise about it. By day 7, all 8 gunners could hit a stationary target at 600 yards. 6 out of 8 could do it at 800 yards. 3 could do it at 1,000. Holloway's doctrine was spreading. December 23, 1944, 2 weeks since the first tank kill, Holloway had destroyed 7 enemy vehicles. His students had destroyed 4 more. 11 German armored vehicles eliminated by machine gun fire. A captured German intelligence report reached Holloway's unit. American forces demonstrate enhanced anti-armor capability. Multiple incidents of armored vehicle destruction by small-caliber fire. Estimate 3 to 4 specialized anti-tank teams operating at extended ranges. Recommend increased vigilance. Holloway read the report and smiled. 3 to 4 teams. The Germans thought multiple units were responsible. They did not realize it was one man who taught 8 others. 8 who would teach 80. The mathematics of force, multiplication. January 14, 1945. Morning mist hung over frozen fields. Holloway had been in position since 0530 waiting. His M2 positioned on a small rise, 900 yards of clear field of fire. At 0715, movement. 4 German vehicles approaching through fog. 2 Panzer IVs, 2 half-tracks. Holloway's hands no longer shook when he aimed. 57 days of combat had burned away the nervousness. What remained was muscle memory. He aimed at the lead Panzer's engine deck, compensated 42 inches high for bullet drop, fired 7 rounds. The 4th one penetrated. Smoke appeared within seconds. The tank stopped. Crew bailed out. Holloway swung the M2 to the 2nd Panzer, waited for it to angle. When it turned to face the burning lead tank, Holloway fired again. This time, the 2nd round in the burst found its mark. Engine fire, smoke, crew evacuation. The half-tracks tried to retreat, too slow. Holloway engaged both. Thin armor, easy penetration. 4 vehicles, 11 minutes. 13 rounds of M8 API. Holloway recorded the kills in his notebook. 11 total now. But the numbers were beginning to blur. Each vehicle represented 4 or 5 men, 44 human beings who died because Holloway had calculated bullet trajectories with machinist precision. 15 miles east, Corporal Kurt Brenner sat in a frozen bunker and read the latest casualty reports. 37 armored vehicles destroyed in 60 days, all by the same method: small caliber penetrations, internal fires, catastrophic kills. The psychological impact was devastating. German tank crews were refusing to operate within 1,000 yards of American lines during daylight. Movement was restricted to night, to fog, to any condition that might hide them from the invisible enemy. But it did not help. The Americans killed tanks at night, in fog, in snow. Wherever German armor appeared, it died. Brenner wrote in his diary, January 15th, 4 more tanks lost yesterday. The Americans see through weather. Through darkness, we are dying, and there is nothing we can do about it. By January 31st, Holloway had destroyed 16 enemy vehicles. His technique had spread to 42 gunners across the 2nd Armored Division. The Wehrmacht was noticing. Orders went out. Avoid engagement with American .50 caliber weapons. But the Americans had M2s everywhere. Avoiding them meant avoiding combat. The mathematics of psychological warfare. Holloway was not just destroying tanks. He was destroying confidence. German armor was afraid to move in daylight. The fear factor multiplied the tactical effect. But the Germans were learning too, and they would not sit idle while American machine gunners destroyed their armor. Counter-sniper teams were being deployed, specialists with orders to find and eliminate American anti-tank gunners. The hunter was about to be hunted. February 15th, 1945, 79 days since Holloway's first kill. 22 enemy vehicles destroyed, but the cost was mounting. Garrett Holloway weighed 151 pounds, down 12 from his arrival weight. Sleep came in 2-hour increments when it came at all. His hands had developed a constant tremor, not from fear, from exhaustion. The war was grinding him down, not just physically, something else, something deeper. Each calculation led to someone dying, each precise aim point, each perfectly compensated trajectory, all of it ended the same way. Fire, smoke, screaming. He had stopped trying to rationalize it. The mathematics demanded it. Every tank he killed saved approximately 15 American lives. That was the average based on engagement data. 22 tanks meant 330 American lives saved. The arithmetic was clear, but arithmetic did not account for the young German faces he saw through his sights. did not account for the screams that echoed in his dreams, did not account for what happened to a man's soul when he became very, very good at killing. March 12, 1945, 93 days of continuous combat, 28 enemy vehicles destroyed. A German supply convoy appeared on the eastern road. 3 trucks, 1 command car. Standard engagement. Holloway aimed at the lead truck. Fired. The truck exploded. Fuel or ammunition. The second truck swerved, tried to escape. Holloway tracked it. Fired. Hit the cab. The truck crashed. The command car tried to reverse. As it turned, Holloway saw clearly through his sights. A German officer in the driver's seat, and in the passenger seat, a young soldier, maybe 19, blonde hair, wide eyes, terrified. Holloway's training said to fire. Enemy in the open, vulnerable, eliminate them. His finger was already squeezing the trigger when something in him hesitated. 1 second. 2. The burst caught the command car's engine block. 1 round penetrated through the engine into the passenger compartment. The young soldier was hit, not killed instantly, wounded. Holloway watched through his sights as the boy fell from the car, screaming. Other Germans ran to help him. Holloway could have fired again, could have killed them all. Instead, he lifted his finger from the trigger, watched them drag the wounded soldier away, watched them load him into the surviving truck, watched them disappear. Dixon stared at him. "Why did you not shoot?" Holloway did not answer for a long time. "Finally, because he is 19, and I am the one who shot him, and that is enough." That night he wrote in his notebook 28 vehicles confirmed. 1 shot I wish I had missed. But there were no more wishes granted. Only more mathematics, more calculations, more killing. March 20th, 1945, eve of Operation Plunder, the Rhine crossing. 36 enemy vehicles destroyed. 102 days of continuous combat. Garrett Holloway sat in a frozen foxhole and cleaned his M2 for the 1,000th time. His hands moved automatically. Disassemble, clean, oil, reassemble. Muscle memory replacing thought. The medical officer found him there. Captain Walsh, 42 years old. "Good man. Sergeant Holloway, you are being rotated off the line." Holloway did not look up from the gun. "No, sir. That was not a request. You have lost 16 pounds. You sleep 2 hours a night when you sleep at all. Your hands shake constantly. You are burning out. I am still effective. You will not be if you collapse. The Rhine crossing starts tomorrow. Largest operation since D-Day. We need you fresh, not dead on your feet." Holloway set down the cleaning rod, met the doctor's eyes. "Sir, with respect, every tank I kill saves 15 Americans. That is not theory. That is documented data. Tomorrow, the Wehrmacht makes its final stand. Every gun they have will be on that river. If I can take out even 3 or 4 tanks, that is 45 to 60 American lives saved. And if you collapse, if exhaustion makes you miss, if you are too slow, and a German tank kills a platoon because you are not sharp enough, then I fail. But I would rather fail trying than sit in the rear knowing I could have helped." Walsh studied him for a long moment. "You understand you are not going to survive this war if you keep pushing like this. Not the way you are going. The war is almost over, sir. Germany is collapsing. Few more weeks. I can rest then." "If you make it that long, I will, sir." Walsh sighed. "Fine. But after the Rhine, you are done. No arguments." "Understood. Understood, sir." The doctor walked away. Holloway returned to cleaning his gun. 1 more operation, 1 more river, then it would be over. He had no idea how wrong that calculation would be. March 21st, 1945, 05:45 hours. Operation Plunder began. Garrett Holloway sat in a landing craft with 37 other men. The artillery bombardment shook the water, made ripples that looked like rain, but it was not rain. It was the largest concentrated firepower since D-Day. Thousands of guns firing simultaneously, turning the eastern bank into hell. Holloway clutched his M2. The gun weighed 84 pounds. He weighed 147, 39 pounds less than when he had arrived in Europe. The landing craft hit the eastern shore. The ramp dropped. Men poured out into waist-deep water. Machine gun fire cut through the morning air. Artillery shells impacted. Explosions, smoke, chaos. Holloway waded through the water, reached the shore, found cover behind a destroyed bunker. Dixon was right behind him. Set up here. No, higher ground. 300 yards east. That rise. They moved through the smoke, reached the position, set up the M2, fed the ammunition belt. 4 API, 1 armor-piercing, 1 tracer. Repeat. The pattern Holloway had developed 102 days ago. Through the smoke, he saw them. German armor. Panthers and Panzer IVs dug in along the ridge. Hull-down positions firing at American forces crossing the river. Holloway calculated ranges, wind temperature, the variables he had memorized, 1,000 yards to the nearest Panther, 72 inches of bullet drop, wind 8 miles per hour, right to left, 12 inches of drift. He aimed, compensated, fired. The first burst missed, adjusted, fired again. The 5th round in the second burst penetrated the Panther's engine deck. Smoke appeared, then fire. The crew bailed out, the tank burned. Vehicle number 37. The battle for the Rhine bridgehead lasted 3 days. The most intense combat Holloway had ever experienced. German resistance was fanatical. The Wehrmacht was making its final stand. Every tank, every gun, every soldier they had left. March 21st afternoon, Holloway engaged 2 more Panthers, one at 900 yards, one at 1,100, both destroyed. Engine deck penetrations, both crews lost. By evening, he had killed 3 tanks in 1 day, his highest single-day count. Vehicles, 37, 38, 39. But the cost was visible. His hands shook so badly he could barely write in his notebook. Dixon had to help him load ammunition belts. The fine motor control was failing. That night, Holloway sat in a hastily dug foxhole and stared at his hands. They would not stop trembling. Not from cold, not from fear, from something breaking inside him. 103 days of calculating death, of precision killing, of being very, very good at ending lives. The mathematics still worked, the ballistics were still accurate, but the man doing the calculations was failing. Piece by piece, calculation by calculation. March 22nd, 1945. Day 2 of the Rhine crossing. German counterattacks intensified. Desperate attempts to push American forces back across the river. At 0812 hours, a Panther appeared at 700 yards. Holloway engaged. His first burst missed entirely, hands shaking too much. Dixon grabbed his shoulder. "Garrett, breathe like you taught us. Breathe." Holloway closed his eyes, forced his breathing to slow, opened his eyes, aimed again, compensated for the tremor, fired. The 3rd round penetrated, the Panther burned. Vehicle 40, at 1445 hours, a Panzer IV at 800 yards. Holloway's vision was blurring. Exhaustion, dehydration, too many days without proper rest. He aimed, missed, adjusted, missed again. 3rd, burst. Finally, penetration, fire. Vehicle 41. At 1920 hours, twilight, a half-track at 600 yards. Should have been an easy shot. Took Holloway 4 bursts. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the gun. But the mathematics still worked. When the round finally hit, the half-track exploded. Vehicle 42. Dixon helped him back to their foxhole that night. Holloway could barely walk. "You need a medic." "No, 1 more day. You cannot even hold the gun steady. I can hold it." "Steady enough. One more day, then it is over. What is over? The battle, the war. Holloway did not answer, did not know how to explain that it was not about the battle. It was about finishing what he had started 104 days ago, about seeing the mathematics through to its conclusion, about proving that precision thinking could defeat superior firepower, even if it killed him in the process. March 23rd, 1945, 0642 hours. Garrett Holloway had not slept, could not sleep. His hands trembled constantly now, his vision occasionally doubled. The medic had found him at 0400, tried to pull him off the line. Holloway refused. One more tank, just one more. Then I am done. You are done now, Sergeant. That is an order. With respect, sir, you are a medic. You cannot give me orders about combat operations. The medic stared at him. You are going to die out here. Maybe, but not today. Through the morning mist, Garrett Holloway saw it. One final German Panther tank emerging from the smoke 1,800 yards away, the longest shot he had ever attempted. The mathematics ran through his head automatically. 70. 8 inches of bullet drop, 12 inches of wind drift. The Panther's engine deck visible, 20 millimeters of armor within my hand or 8 penetration capability barely. Holloway aimed. His hands shook. He braced the gun against his shoulder, used his body weight to stabilize it, compensated high, compensated left, and fired. The first burst missed, adjusted, fired again. The fifth round in the second burst penetrated 1,800 yards, a hole 12.7 millimeters wide in 20 millimeters of armor. The incendiary charge detonated 3,000 degrees, melting steel, igniting fuel. The Panther's engine exploded. Flames shot 15 feet into the air. The crew tried to bail out. Too late. The ammunition cooked off. Secondary explosions. The entire vehicle consumed. Across the Rhine, Corporal Kurt Breener watched through his binoculars. The 7th tank in 2 days. The 43rd tank in 105 days. He lowered his binoculars. His hands shook, not from cold, from understanding that the war was over, that Germany had lost, that no amount of courage or skill could overcome an enemy who could turn machine guns into tank killers. Garrett. Holloway lowered his M2, pulled out his notebook with hands that could barely hold the pencil, wrote in barely legible script, March 23rd, 0642, Panther tank, range 1,800 yards, M8 API, engine deck penetration, catastrophic kill. Total armored vehicles destroyed 43. He closed the notebook, looked at the burning tank across the river, and felt absolutely nothing. The war had taken something from him. He did not know if he would ever get it back. Dixon put a hand on his shoulder. You did it. 43. Nobody else in this entire army has killed that many tanks with a machine gun. Holloway nodded, could not speak. The mathematics had worked. 105 days, 43 vehicles, approximately 215 tank crew members, another 38 infantry. Total German deaths caused 253 men, 253 families, 253 mothers, 253 funerals. All because Garrett Holloway had learned to calculate bullet trajectories with machinist precision. The war in Europe ended 45 days later. May 7th, 1945. Germany surrendered. Garrett Holloway returned to the United States in June, flew into New York, took a train to Ohio, arrived in Akron on June 19, 1945. His father met him at the station. They did not speak much. There was not much to say. Holloway went back to work at Goodyear Tire on June 25th. Same lathe, same tolerances, same precision work, as if nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. He met Ruth Bennett at a church social in October 1945, married her in March 1946, had 4 children over the next 10 years, worked at Goodyear for 37 years, retired in 1982, never discussed the war. When neighbors asked if he had served, he said yes, When they asked what he had done, he said he had been a machine gunner. That was all. For 40 years, Garrett Holloway kept the notebook in a locked box in his basement. Never showed it to anyone, not his wife, not his children. The 43 kills, the calculations, the techniques, all of it remained buried until one day in 1967. Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall, Cleveland, Ohio, November 11th, 1967. Veterans Day celebration. Garrett Holloway was 50 years old, gray hair, reading glasses, 20 pounds heavier than his combat weight. He attended because his son had asked him to. The hall was filled with men in their 40s and 50s, World War II veterans, career veterans. Holloway sat alone in a corner until a voice spoke in accented English. "You were 2nd Armored Division." Holloway looked up. A man stood there, maybe 2 years younger than Holloway. Slight German accent. "Yes. Rhine crossing. March 1945. Yes." The man sat down, extended his hand. "Kurt Brenner. I was corporal. 6th Panzer Division, defensive positions east of Remagen." Holloway stared at the hand, then shook it. Brenner's grip was firm. "Working man's hands. You were machine gunner. M2 Browning." "Yes." Brenner smiled without humor. "You killed my friends. 7 tanks in 2 days. March 21st through 23rd. I watched them burn." Silence. Holloway met Brenner's eyes. "I killed many Germans following orders like you. 43 tanks. I saw the records after war. All destroyed by one gunner. You." Holloway nodded. "That is 200 men, maybe more. I have calculated it at 253, including infantry kills." Brenner's face went pale. "You counted." "I am a machinist. I count everything." They sat in silence. Then Brenner spoke quietly. "I immigrated to America in 1951, came to Cleveland, started over. But I still dream about Rhine crossing, about watching tanks explode, about not understanding how you were killing us. We used armor-piercing, incendiary rounds, M8 API. They penetrated thin armor and exploded inside. Machine gun bullets, killing tanks. Yes." Brenner shook his head. "War made us do terrible things." "Yes, war did that. Not us. We were soldiers. I hated you for years, the man who killed my friends. But now we are both just old men living in same country. War is over. Yes, war is over." Brenner stood, extended his hand. "Again. I cannot forgive what you did, but I understand you had no choice. Same as me." Holloway stood, shook the German's hand. "I cannot forgive myself either, but I did what mathematics demanded. Every tank I killed saved American lives. That was the arithmetic. Cold arithmetic. Yes, but necessary arithmetic." They held the handshake for a long moment. 2 men, different sides, same suffering. War does not create heroes. It creates survivors who carry weight. In 1981, the United States Army declassified operational reports from the European theater. Historians discovered Garrett Holloway's 43 tank kills. The Akron Beacon-Journal ran a front-page story. They interviewed Holloway at his home. He was 64 years old, recently retired. The reporter asked him how it felt to be a hero. Holloway's response: "I am not a hero. I was a machinist who learned to aim. Many men did extraordinary things in that war. I survived to talk about it." The real heroes did not come home. The reporter pressed, asked about his technique. Holloway said, "I applied precision thinking to an imprecise situation. The same mathematics I used to cut submarine parts to 1/10,000th of an inch. I used to calculate bullet trajectories. Mathematics does not change, only the application changes. But you saved lives. I ended lives. 253 German lives. That they were enemy soldiers does not make killing them noble. It makes it necessary. Necessary and noble are different things." The interview ended shortly after. Holloway refused all subsequent interview requests. Today, Garrett Holloway's M2 Browning sits in the United States Army Ordnance Museum, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. The placard reads M2 Browning heavy machine gun used by Staff Sergeant Garrett Holloway, 2nd Armored Division, 1944 to 1945, credited with destroying 43 enemy armored vehicles using M8 armor-piercing incendiary ammunition. This weapon represents American ingenuity under fire. Holloway's notebook sits beside the gun, open to the page dated March 23, 1945. The final entry, tank number 43. Modern military doctrine still teaches Holloway's techniques: mixed ammunition belts, precision aim points, ballistic compensation. The M8 API round evolved into the M20 API, still standard issue in NATO forces. The same principles Holloway discovered in 1944 are being applied today because the mathematics of warfare does not change, only the tools change. And Americans, when faced with inadequate tools, do not complain, they optimize, they innovate, they win. Garrett Holloway died in 1997 at age 80, heart failure, peaceful, surrounded by family. His obituary in the Akron newspaper mentioned his military service in one paragraph. The rest focused on his 40 years at Goodyear, his children, his grandchildren, his quiet life. That is how he would have wanted it, because to Garrett Holloway, the 43 tanks were not an accomplishment. They were a burden, a necessary burden that he had carried for 53 years, carried quietly, without complaint, without glory. The way a machinist carries the knowledge that precision matters, that 1/10,000th of an inch can mean the difference between life and death, with precision, with humility, and with the understanding that being good at something terrible does not make you proud. It just makes you necessary. And when the necessity ends, you go back to building things instead of destroying them. You measure twice, cut once, and never ever guess. Because in war and in peace, precision thinking saves lives. That was Garrett Holloway's legacy, not the kills, the precision. If this story moved you, you understand why precision matters, why mathematics saves lives, why innovation comes from necessity. Garrett Holloway proved that American ingenuity is not about having the best equipment. It is about using whatever equipment you have better than anyone else thought possible. That lesson matters today in every field, every challenge, every impossible situation. Do not complain about inadequate tools. Optimize the tools you have. Calculate the variables. Execute with precision. And never stop until the job is done. To Staff Sergeant Garrett Holloway, and to every American who proved that thinking defeats strength when precision guides the effort, we remember, we honor your service. We tell your stories, because some mathematics are too important to remain forgotten.